Hello, this is Diné here, your time management expert. And in this video, I wanted to talk about you being the creator of your time, the creator of your thoughts, the creator of your emotions. And I'm coming to you after having started reading this book called How Emotions Are Made. And it's by Lisa Feldman Barrett. And in her book, she's explaining how the whole concept of how we've been thinking about how we've come up with emotions. She has a picture in the book of a person who's very emotional. And she's asking, when you look at this picture, what comes up for you? What do you think this person is going through? What emotion is this person having? And as you look at the picture, certain thoughts may come up. And the whole idea behind her showing this picture is to explain that when you look at the picture in full context, understanding what the picture means, you can see that the expression can be something else, or the emotions that you initially thought was behind this facial expression, it's actually coming from something else. So this is the first picture. And then the second picture, this is Serena when she beat her sister Venus, and how excited she was over winning the match. And that was her expression. So when you consider looking at the first picture and then looking at the second picture, in the book, Lisa Barrett is really talking about how when you see a person's facial expression, you may come up with your interpretation of what they may be going through. And she's explaining that you can't really base it on that. That you really need to understand the full context of what was happening. And when you understand the full context of what is happening, then you can really connect. You'll have clarity around what the facial expression was about. Even though we've been taught that in school, and you even have emojis now that's showing you smiling face means happy, we're conditioned to really think that those facial expressions, and sure, we can say that by automatically we come up with those facial expressions, because of course if something is funny you laugh, so of course laughter means something is funny. But it's not about that per se, but that there's so many levels underneath happiness. There's so many levels underneath sadness, so many words to describe that one feeling. And so picking and choosing from, creating a general picture is not really the right way to interpret something. It is really looking at the layers beneath it, because one facial expression can mean so many different things. That is the context behind what she's explaining in the book. So basically, our emotions are learned. And just like we learned it, we can unlearn it and relearn it. Meaning that you may think that you're stuck with a certain emotion or how you're feeling. And you may have been taught to react a certain way to certain situations. Or the way that you reacted to something when you were younger doesn't mean that as an adult you still need to react that same way. You can replace your old pattern or your old way of doing, your old way of reacting. You can replace that with something that serves you. It's wonderful to see that there is nothing set in stone. So we put a lot of, because I'm one of those people, I don't believe everything I hear at first listening. I need to experience it, get more information about it before I just take things on. So I always like when I see things like this, showing that for years and years, they teach us even in school that when you see a person's, what face does this mean? What face does that mean? And just looking at a person's face, you'll be able to tell what they may be going through, what they're thinking, whatever. But the reality is that we don't really know. It's just us interpreting based on what we're going through. It's kind of like projecting, but everyone is going through their own thing. And just by looking at a certain person's face, you don't really know what's going on inside. And even that whole concept, it goes to show you that we are really living our life based on what we're experiencing. And even through this whole journey, I've learned that everything that I think may not always be a reality. It's just my thought, and I'm well aware that I am going through life through my own experiences. So what looks to be a certain situation or issue from my perspective, that's just from my perspective. And the wonderful thing is, because it's not the reality, it can always change because there are always a lot of other options. And I'm just saying that because sometimes we get so stuck in that victim role. Our day is just hectic. We have a lot that we need to do. I'm spending my time doing this when I'd rather do that. What can I do? This is just my situation. And we feel stuck. There's no hope because we are living from, our circumstance, our past. And sometimes we don't realize that there is another way. There is another way, but we don't see it because we're living through our lens, you know. But there's a whole bunch of other lens. You can put on a new frame and see things differently, completely differently. But we don't even realize that that frame exists. It reminds me over the weekend, my 5-year-old was crying. And I went to him and I said, "Well, why are you crying?" And he's like, "Well, because my 11-year-old son is playing now, and the 5-year-old wants to play the game." And I said, "Well, why aren't you just letting him to play the game?" And he says, "Well, he was playing the game for a long time, and I kept asking him, I want to get a turn, and he's not letting me get a turn. And I kept waiting and waiting, and he's not allowing me to play." And so I tried to calm my 5-year-old, and I said, "Well, let him get a chance to play since you've been playing for a long time. Let the 11-year-old play the game." Then my 13-year-old, he says, "Well, I think he's really crying because the controller was taken away from him and the way that the 11-year-old took it away from the 5-year-old." And I wasn't there, so I didn't see it happen, but my 13-year-old, who saw the full context of what had happened, he was able to see that it wasn't so much that he's not playing anymore. It was more because of the way that the game was taken away from him, which makes sense because I can tell from me talking to the 5-year-old that he was okay to leave. It's not that he really wanted to play much longer once I was able to find something else for him to do. It was really about the way it was taken. So without me having the full context of what had happened and just coming in and seeing the 5-year-old crying, I'm thinking that he's crying really because he doesn't, he still wants to play, and he's still working on his emotional intelligence and really seeing behind the scenes, at the root of it. Why is he really crying? He's still developing that, and not really asking himself those underlying questions. But the 13-year-old who was able to see the whole thing, he was able to understand the full context and understand why. And so I'm just saying that to say that sometimes we need to understand the full picture, really see the all the details of why we're reacting a certain way in order to really understand and get clarity around what had happened. But without doing that self-reflection and having someone guide you through what's really going on, why you really reacting that way, and coming up with those emotional triggers, then it can leave you stuck with the way that you're reacting, how you handle situations, and you'll never get that result until you do that inner work to really see what the real problem is, or else we'll be trying to fix the wrong thing. In that case, I was trying to fix them having equal amount of time instead of working on how to get the remote back in an appropriate way. And once you know what that is, then that'll lead you to making changes and coming up with solutions, getting things resolved. Sometimes when you're limited and you're just looking through your own lens, it's hard to see the full picture. Working with the subconscious mind, it allows you to really open up and see different options, different avenues, change perspective on how you're looking at something. And when you're able to do that, it takes you out of that victim mode and it can help you to walk a new path, be able to move forward in a different way, a way that works for you. It's really about opening up your options. And so I wanted to just come on to let you know that there is a different way to go about doing things. If you feel stuck, if you feel like this is the only way to go about living, that you can always change it. You can always change how you're spending your time and what you're focusing on during that time that you have within a day, um, and just change your perspective around it. Another example is us creating our thoughts. So I have a friend who was explaining to me that he had walked by, he was in the city and he walked by a lady who was really, um, she was really angst. She was agitated about something. And he wasn't sure what it was. He didn't say anything to her, but he saw like the frustration in her as he walked by her. He says, the way she was reacting, I I had to give her, I had to just, he said he did some tapping. Tapping is his thing, emotional freedom technique. And so he did some tapping for her. He did it on himself with the intention of it calming her down. And he walked past her. And as he got to the end of the block, he said, he turned around and he came back and he noticed that she was settled. And he says, it was very interesting how she settled. He's like, I don't know if it worked, Diné. He says, um, it might have worked me doing the tapping, but I don't know, maybe it was just a coincidence. And I said, well, TJ, which story serves you? Because really, you're the creator of both story. You're the creator of, yes, it could have been a coincidence, but you're the creator that the tapping could have also affected her because that was your intention. So which story serves you? And he said, well, of course, me having that impact on her to settle her down by the time I walked down the block and came back and she's in a completely different state. Of course, that story serves me. I said, well, you're the creator of both stories. Why don't you choose that second story, that the tapping with your intention to make her calm down, that helped her? And the whole point is that you can move forward in life with a story that serves you because you created both of those stories. So why not choose the one that worked for you? What is the consequence of choosing the story that it was just a coincidence versus the consequence of the other one? Now you can take both paths, but the story is still yours to create and it is going to affect you in a certain way. And you can create it. And, for some, they may say, yeah, but we don't really know. Yeah, we don't really know either way what was the case. And you could be lying to yourself, but the fact of the matter is that we're always lying to ourselves. The story of the coincidence could be you lying to yourself or the other one. So just choose the one that worked for you all the time. So that way you can, you're creating your thoughts. You're creating how things will affect you later on. So if you're a mom who feels like you're a victim of your circumstances, you feel like you are um, easily triggered by certain things that your kid does, and you want to be more pleasant around your kids, and you really are confused about um, why you're reacting to certain things in certain ways, then it's worth for you to look into that further. Of course, I can give you the list of benefits, but I'm sure you already know better quality time with your kids, having your kids enjoy being around you, affecting how they react emotionally to things. There's a whole host of benefits to you being the example for your child. As someone who's specialized in working with the subconscious, I can tell you that you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised at what lies behind why you're reacting that way. For some of you, you may feel like, well, my emotions are just my emotions. That's just how I am. That's how I've always been. This is how I react to these situations. This is how I've always been. This is how acted all my life. This is how I was raised. This is how I saw my parents acting. And there's nothing I could do about it. I'm just a victim of my emotions. But the reality is, you're not a victim of your emotions, or the way that you perceive it can change, or the way you perceive the situation that triggered you, the perception can be changed. And so you're not a victim. There are many outlets, many ways, or many things that you can do so that way you don't have to react to things that your child does. You don't have to react to it the way that you have been in the past. The key really is to finding out why you are being triggered. And in order to do that, you have to do the subconscious work. And it's wonderful to go and complain to the neighbors, to another mom, to your husband, your partner, or even complain to the kids about a situation or about how you're feeling. But the change is not going to happen by complaining. The change is going to happen by you knowing what the trigger is and working to change your relationship with that trigger. But the only way, again, to do it is to do the subconscious work. And we can change, make changes around that for you. And of course, this is not just for you. You will be learning about yourself, but the change is for your children and others around you as well. So if you are easily triggered and you want to know what those triggers are, then click on the free breakthrough call with me and we could talk about what's been going on and how you can make the change. And know that it is possible. Change is possible for you. So I hope you find this helpful and I thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.